So, welcome back to the Hockey Source. Today, Kevin and I are talking about how hockey helps people with life issues and challenges. Our first guest is leading the charge in helping the homeless through a connection with hockey. Now, this guy graduated from the University of Western. That's 2 weeks in a row we've had somebody on the show that graduated just down the road from my alma mater.
That's right.
He grew up in Montreal, played minor hockey in the Villemar Hurricanes organization. Did I get that right?
Villemar, well said, yep.
Now active in the Unionville Men's Hockey League. Now, he's got some experience in the business world. Past General Manager Canada for Cadbury North America for 3 years. Past Regional Vice President Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada for Frito-Lay for 9 years. Past Director of National Sales, Coca-Cola for 10 years. And he's currently the co-founder and executive director of Hockey Helps the Homeless. Gary, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Jack. Pleasure to be here.
So, Mr. Gary Scullion, what's it like knowing that you paved the way for the great Mario Lemieux playing for the Villemar Hurricanes?
Well, interesting tidbit there. My dad actually coached Mario for 4 or 5 years in his youth, and I was a couple of years older than Mario, and we used to have these practices. In those days, you'd actually have practices on the outside ice, Kevin, as you would recall.
Oh, yeah.
And my dad, given that I was older, the thought was that I'd be able to, show the kids how to run through some of the drills. And I got to tell you, I used to get nervous about it because I knew that the kid coming behind me was Mario Lemieux, and he was going to show me up anyhow. So I don't know about paving the way.
Now, I got to tell you, Gary, if you think Kevin knows about playing outside on ponds, I mean, I grew up in hockey when there was no such thing as an arena. It was all outdoors.
And I think he played only with a one-piece stick, Gary, and a one-piece wasn't like today. It was a piece of wood.
Yes.
And he had to travel 10 miles in the snow to get there,
yes,
right?
And shovel off the sheet of ice before I could even play. So let's get right into it. Just help us tell the people what Hockey Helping the Homeless is all about.
Hockey Helps Homeless, we're a charitable organization. We were founded 17 years ago by myself and a couple of other close associates. And so we've been at it 17 years. What we do is we leverage this great game, this national pastime of ours in Canada, to bring awareness and support to Canada's homeless. So we put on these fantasy hockey tournaments in 5 NHL cities. We're in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver, where average Joes and Jills now get to lace up for the day with their favorite NHL alumni, and now with a new relationship with the Canadian Women's Hockey League, we've got a women's tournament that's been brought in as part of the overall event.
Good stuff.
So, Gary, you left corporate Canada in a pretty high-profile position, and now you're with the Hockey Helps the Homeless. What was kind of the defining moment for you, going kind of that national level, saying, we got to take this and go big with it?
Well, I realized about a decade ago that this thing had legs. I mean, there was tremendous opportunity to leverage the concept, this Pro-Am one-day hockey tournament, to make a difference in the lives of Canada's most needy people. And when you go back 17 years ago, I think that the real defining moment for me was actually the cause. Back then we really didn't know what we were doing, and we would take the monies raised at our events and we'd buy these survival kits, which were sleeping bags and gloves and hats and scarves and toiletries and things of that nature. Put them into a big army kind of knapsack, and then we would go out into the city of Toronto and we would hand them out to homeless people on the streets. And I'll never forget handing one out to a particular individual, and the gentleman was so incredibly grateful. Put his arms around me, hugged me, and I got back into the van, and I was broken, completely broken, trying to understand how it is that in our society today, and even back then, that people could be living like this. So you fast forward, and you realize that we've got this great game. There's an opportunity to get people involved and to give back to a cause. And so, that was really a defining moment for me. I was in Boston from 2003 till 2007, and when I came back from Boston, I realized that the two events we had going on at the time, one in Toronto and one in Montreal, were extremely successful, but there was no reason why we couldn't take this model and adopt it elsewhere. And so we set out to launch in Ottawa, Calgary, and Vancouver. And so here we are in 5 NHL cities today.
You listen to the Hockey Source, and we're talking to Gary Scullion from Hockey Helps the Homeless. So who else is involved with you and the company, and kind of like what are your major events actually all about?
Okay. Well, we partner with the local NHL alumni associations in each city, and now with the Canadian Women's Hockey League. We also have a number of key sponsors locally that help support us, and we raise funds through participation. So individuals can go online at hockeyhelpsthehomeless.com. They register to play in a tournament. It costs $150 to register, and then they set up a personal fundraising page where they have to raise a minimum of $350 in order to play in the tournament. But that tournament gets you the opportunity to play with, on every team you'll have 2 NHL alumni in the men's event or 2 Canadian Women Hockey League pros in the women's event. You walk into the dressing room and there's your name up on your jersey. We've got great support from a lot of our sponsors, and so the caliber of the jerseys and the uniforms are like NHL caliber. And of course, you've got all the sports drinks, and you've got the hockey tape, and we've got on-site massage therapists and towel service. We want to give folks that attend these events the feeling of being a pro for a day. So that's pretty cool, and that's the feedback that we get, from people. It's never ceases to amaze me for those individuals that walk in the dressing room and they're just in awe, and it's like, wow, I get to be a pro for the day. I would tell you, and I need to say this, that we couldn't have gotten to the expansion levels that we're at without the support of our great volunteers. We've got 200 plus volunteers across the country, and we've got organizing committees in each city that do a tremendous job. And then on top of that, we have our founding national sponsor, which is Great West Life, Canada Life, London Life. They've been with us for 5 years, and they've really helped us expand in a terrific way. So that's kind of who's involved, and it's the average Joe and Jill across the country that want to play in our tournaments.
I'm signing up.
Well, and if people go take a look at the website, I mean, there's some players that are involved in this from the pro ranks that are really the awe factor. I mean, I was quite taken back by the number of ex-pros who have stepped up here.
Some of our former guests.
Yes, yeah. So, Gary, we all see the homeless in our cities. Often we hear or read that being homeless is a self-inflicted problem and that they should be taking care of themselves. What does your evidence and experiences tell you?
Well, let me first say that I'm not an expert when it comes to homelessness. However, I have been involved with a number of outstanding homeless support organizations for the past 17 years who do a lot of work with the street-involved people. The biggest issue to me is that there's an incredible misconception about the homeless, and that's part of our goal, to bring awareness and support and dispel some of the issues. Let me be really clear. I haven't met anybody, and I've traveled across the country and met with various homeless outreach organizations and with a number of street-involved people, and I can tell you that absolutely nobody wants to be on the streets. There's so much more to the issue than what people realize. The Canadian Mental Health Association, they estimate that over 50% of the homeless suffer from mental health issues. And then there's the whole issue of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse that forces many youth to flee from abusive situations. In fact, youth under the age of 18 represent the fastest growing segment of homeless in Canada, which is pretty alarming.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the more surprising contributors that I've learned over the years as well is that the impact of severe trauma and what that can have on an individual and actually lead to homelessness. This could be the sudden loss of a loved one or even the loss of a job, and people that might spiral out of control and eventually end up on the street. So, to the extent that we can provide a venue that brings about funding and support, but also creates an awareness and helps demystify